This podcast is brought to you by House to Grow in conjunction with Antony Selby, a financial advisor. House to Grow is a not-for-profit organisation which empowers communities through education for life, holistic health and wellbeing. We hope this series is helpful and impactful.
Hey everybody, and welcome to today's episode of House to Grow. This episode is about financial wellbeing and health impacts. We have with us today Cody Harmon from Crew's Family Office and Crew's Financial Planning. Welcome, Cody.
Hey, Antony. How you going? I've heard you had a good break.
Yeah, I did. I just got back from Byron Bay, which was absolutely fantastic. I went with the wife and kids and had 7 nights of long overdue rest.
Any walks on the beach? See Chris Hemsworth? Anyone?
I didn't see Chris, no, but I did go for a few walks on the beach. Yeah, it was magical.
Oh, awesome.
So speaking of my trip and the broader effects of wellness, let's talk about financial health. It's an important component of well-being. Research supports a link between financial savings and healthy lifestyle habits, as well as an association between better health and less healthcare expenses. Taking an active role in managing finances is associated with less stress, increased feelings of security, and greater financial confidence. Financial security has a more significant impact than income alone on well-being. Cody, tell me about yourself and tell me about how wealth, health, and happiness are ultimately connected with one another.
Yeah, well, I mean, a bit about me, Antony. I was born in Warrnambool, grew up in Geelong, which are 2 sort of towns, cities in Victoria, and also moved to Melbourne for university and didn't leave.
Yep.
I love gardening and I've always been fascinated by money, so I got into it when my dad was sort of trading small cap stocks. For everyone, a small cap stock is a smaller stock that's listed on the Australian Stock Exchange you can buy. Think about a small mining company. So yeah, I was looking at those stocks and what my dad was doing, and yeah, got interested in money. And there's a bit of turbulence financially growing up as well, which I would like my family to avoid and my clients to avoid as well. So that allowed sort of gave me a bit of the drive to get into finance. So when I approach
Cody, can you tell me a little bit about, would it be okay if you told us a little bit about that turbulence?
Yeah, I mean, like growing up, it was kind of interesting where we didn't have much money when I was a really small, like a baby in Warrnambool, and then it really came quite quickly.
Yep.
And when we moved to Geelong, I went to private school and had the benefits of that right through. But then towards the end, we had a fair, the GFC and a few health issues with my family. And after that, that resulted in my parents losing their house and, a lot of stress with that. And I was able to see some things not to do and some things that you should do. So, when building wealth, taking the right amount of risk, I was able to learn that from my father a lot. However, not taking too much risk as well, which is also I learned what not to do from my father as well. And then on my mum's side, that just real process, committed drive, high work ethic. None of them had uni degrees, or actually my mum does have an arts degree, but They weren't typically educated at uni, but they were able to build things out of the ground from a wealth perspective, just from hard work and good sales skills. So yeah, I mean, I thank them for my upbringing and to help me get here today. Yeah.
Yep. And during your upbringing, or either personally or professionally, tell me about how that sort of turbulence, you mentioned there were a few health issues growing up as well, that health, wealth, and happiness. Can you put that together for us in a triangle?
Yeah, so a metaphor that I personally believe in is having a balance between those three areas.
Mm-hmm.
And to give you an example, if you're not making the right health decisions, all things remaining equal, you're more likely to get chronic illnesses, things happen to you, and that in turn is going to relate in less of an ability to work productively and produce an income. To give you an example, if you're eating Macca's or McDonald's more than three times a week, or even eating it at all, in my opinion, you're going to have less energy when you're working. And then, all in all, when you finish work, you don't want to work out. You're not going to be as healthy from a fitness point of view. And that's going to impact your relationships with your family and others too. And so that creates what I would call a downward spiral. And then, as an alternative to that, instead of going to McDonald's, you did a good workout, you ate a healthy salad, and, you had more energy, you worked harder, you're happier with your friends and family, you can create an upward spiral. And so having those areas in balance is really, really important.
So in the McDonald's example, it might appear to be cheaper. It usually isn't than fresh produce, fresh fruit and vegetables. But even if it is cheaper in the short term, all of those costs, the health costs that you might accumulate over the long term, cancer, diabetes, heart disease, all of that stuff that comes from eating too much processed food, is likely to cost a lot of money as well. As well as, just affecting your work and your productivity, how much energy you have and how happy you are. It's also probably going to affect how much you have to pay over the long term to make sure that you're okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Find anyone who's going through cancer. In my family, I've had a few people impacted, and the costs of that are absolutely horrendous. Yep. Particularly, a lot of the drugs to treat that are not on the pharmaceutical benefit scheme. So, unless you're adequately insured for those events, you're actually going to find that the financial impact is worse longer, even though you might have a short-term benefit of getting cheap food. There are ways to eat healthily and cheaply as well. You could go to if you're in Melbourne, as an example, you could go to the Vic Market or one of the markets at the end of the day and get really cheap food. There are also food delivery businesses that actually get all of the odd-shaped apples or vegetables that the supermarkets don't take. And you can get that cheaper than the supermarket. So there's always a way. I think a lot of us find it too easy to go, too expensive, and that's really not what you're saying. It's saying, I don't want to put the work in to do it. And there's, obviously there are unfortunate circumstances, but you got to put in the work, and then those benefits are going to go into other areas. And it's not easy for me to just sit here and just say work harder, but think about not just the first order consequences of your decisions, it's the second and third order consequences. You tell someone off or have some road rage with someone on the road, you might feel good now, and you're going to take that anger home with you. You annoy a work colleague, they're going to resent you for 5 years. You might not get a promotion, right? Think long term, not short term. Now, it's hard for our brains to do that, Antony. We have evolved to survive. First and foremost, berries in a bush, grab them, instant gratification. Right? We don't want to. It's hard for us. It's not our default programming to go, okay, we need to think longer term, not just in the short term, here and now. I'm hungry, I want this food.
Yeah. So let's think about some practical examples. What would be your 3 biggest recommendations regarding managing finances, managing money, to achieve less stress, increased feelings of security, and greater financial confidence? So 3.
Yeah, good question. So the first part about reducing stress, financial anxiety is one of the leading causes of relationship, marital breakdown in Australia and worldwide.
Yep.
And over 13.2 million Australians do not have emergency funds. So when we're talking about stress, that means there is no buffer of cash or money in the bank above your week-to-week expenses, including rent, or your week-to-week expenses, which would include your mortgage. If a shock comes your way, you do not have room to move.
Yep.
We see it right now with inflation. So step one is having emergency funds.
How much do people need?
Typically 3 months of expenses as a rule of thumb if you want one. And that's just because usually that'll gives you enough time to find a new job if you're a contractor and not able to, or you lose your role and you're not able to find employment straight away, or if you can't work and a waiting period for an insurance claim for income protection, hypothetically, you have a bit of a buffer there for a shock. Even if a kid is sick and there is no real stop to your work, at least you're able to absorb the shock and then build back up. But Antony, I think the more important thing is having a system and structural support to save money.
Okay. Can you expand on that?
Yeah. So the way I break this down is you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your habits and systems. A good paraphrase quote from James Clear, an author of Atomic Habits. Now, the reason why we fall to the level of our systems and habits is because of the fact that we have limitations as humans, like we were touching on earlier. You see the awesome targeted tracking cookie that's placed a dress that is exactly what your preferences are, needs are. Everything's targeted. You want to use Apple Pay and go bang, bang and purchase that item. Or use a buy now, pay later solution that allows you to take from your future savings capacity and spend in the present. So what we need is structural support. And what that looks like is bucketing your money into, firstly, income, bills and committed expenses, savings, and then week-to-week spending. They're the first steps I would do.
One more time.
Income, bills and committed expenses. And the reason why that's first is because of the fact that if you don't pay those bills and committed expenses, the severity is higher.
Yes.
And the reason is that they're contractual obligations. So we look at your phone bill, usually on a 24-month phone plan with Telstra. You don't want to default on that. It'll impact your credit rating. And you can't buy a home, right? So step one, we need to pay our contractual obligations and committed bills. And likewise, if we don't pay our electricity bill or our internet or our rent or mortgage, we don't have a home to live in or an ability to work. So first and foremost, pay those first. Then you have two buckets remaining, savings, spending. A lot easier. We as a business, our automated cash flow philosophy believes we then save our money first that we want to save towards our goals. If you don't see it, you won't spend it.
So you pay. So once you set money aside for your bills and all of your contractual obligations, you then pay yourself.
You pay your future self?
Your future self.
Capacity. Yeah.
Okay.
Practical example, your super. Do you see it? No. Payroll does it. Payroll does it for most in Australia outside of 2 million SMEs that we have.
Small businesses.
Small businesses who still, a lot of them do pay it. Now, because you don't touch that and it's invested automatically, that compounds. Even some of the worst people with money, by the time they get to retirement, will have hundreds and hundreds of thousands at least in super. Why? Because they can't touch it. And it compounds and it's invested over the long term in an automated way. So the system of super allows that structure in the system allows people to build money. So we need to implement a similar structure and system with our own money that we can access in theory before we reach age 60 and 65 and can access our super. So we need to have an automated direct debit
Yeah.
that goes towards a savings account or an investment portfolio or your offset account if you have a mortgage already. So you are building wealth and you don't realize it.
Yep.
Then something magic happens, Antony. Firstly, correct me if I'm wrong, but most of your cash flow is automated, isn't it? 80% of it is bills, expenses are paid for. You have a roof over your head and you're on track for your goals.
Yeah.
What's left over is things we have control over. So when you go to the supermarket, do you have control over whether you buy expensive organic mangoes or raspberries, or you buy apples? You have control, don't you? Apples are cheaper, bananas are cheaper than the raspberries. You have the choice. Expensive cereal, cheap cereal. Not that I advocate eating cereal in the first place, but if you get my point, you have the ability to make a decision in the moment. You can buy something on sale or not buy something on sale. So that choice bucket, that spending bucket, is what we want to have a direct debit week to week from the account your salary is paid into to that spending account. We want to have a direct debit weekly. And then all you have to do is make sure you do not spend more than what is in that weekly account. Let's get practical. Say it's $500 a week. All you have to do is make sure that that $500 does not hit zero. Bills are paid, future self's on track. All we need to do is make sure that doesn't hit zero.
That's great.
It's the easiest way to have a structural system and support to help you save money.
Excellent. So that's one tip?
Correct, yeah. Structural support, emergency funds is probably the second.
The second, emergency funds, So at least 3 months is a good rule of thumb. And that varies depending on who you are, how much you earn, how much you spend, your future spending obligations. Are you retired, or do you have are you young and do you work? How secure is your income? Are you an artist versus, say, someone more secure, maybe an accountant or I would have liked to have said toll road collection person, but they don't exist anymore.
And Antony, a lot of people are also in a younger demographic are more interested in spending on lifestyle now. So to give you an example, if we have someone who is 25 today versus when our parents were 25, there is a big shift in delaying having kids, spending more on eating out because it's more available to us. And also there is a shift on, we want the best clothes, the best gym gear. We buy new furniture. We don't have secondhand furniture.
My parents used to tell me they were living on milk crates for the first few months when they bought their first home. They didn't have any chairs.
So, I say this probably on the verge of Gen Y, Gen X. I'm at 31 years old, and I can say that there is a very, very big shift where even myself, there is a propensity to spend more on lifestyle and have it more now than deferring that and building wealth. And the great thing is there's no right or wrong. What we're getting at is just bucketing your money so you know those trade-offs. You know what you're saving and you know what you're spending. You can make those adjustments and you're okay with it.
So it sounds like, sorry to interrupt, it sounds like your third tip is almost just avoid temptation. Because that's
control your desires. Your desires. That's very important. So what you desire is going to result in whether or not you're happy or unhappy. If I desire a Lamborghini and a farm on the Mornington Peninsula and also the ability to travel to Europe every year, I'm probably going to be less happy as I have to work harder on that mouse wheel to get to that actual outcome and desire. If I desire less things, more simplicity, minimalism, and still a few nice creature comforts that are in line with my values, my desires are more likely to have purpose and happiness. Another tip is also, what limiting beliefs do you have with money? What's your psychology with it? So ever heard someone say, more money, more problems?
Yeah, we were talking, I spoke to Betsy Westcott in the first episode exactly about money mindset, and that was one of the things that came up.
Okay, well, let's go into a little bit, is the psychology of that as well. And I don't know what you have talked about with Betsy, but if you have things in your head, voices in your head saying more money, more problems, all people with money are evil,
Yep.
things that our parents may have planted into us.
Mm.
If that is in your subconscious brain,
Yep.
you will self-sabotage and you will not be consciously aware of it.
Yeah, we say, I think in the last episode we said, or Betsy might have said, that the money mindset is literally at the base of the triangle, at the base of the pyramid. It's the most important thing that you have to get right of all, because if you don't have the right money mindset, you'll sabotage everything else.
Yeah, a few people might not like this particular individual because of a difference in conservative culture versus more of an extroverted culture. But Tony Robbins
Yes,
is a very good authority on how to deal with those issues that we're talking about regarding those
mindset.
beliefs and mindset issues. And yeah, what is in your subconscious, and the way it will sabotage it is you might be in a situation where money's come your way, there might be a bit of an inheritance or whatever. You just go spend it. Just go buy a TV, go buy a new barbecue. You don't save it. You book a $20,000 holiday, and it just sort of happens, right? And it's because there is a subconscious issue there around, well, if I have money, I'm evil.
Or I just deserve it.
Problems will come to me.
Or I deserve it because I've worked so hard. That's another one.
But what's crazy, Antony, is you're consciously not aware of it.
Yeah.
You are consciously not aware of that. Your brain is going, problems are coming my way. So your brain generates a subconscious reason to just get rid of it.
Yeah.
And that's some of the advanced concepts that people should look to read books on and get their heads around. So that's probably my third tip. Understand your mindset. That's one of the tips.
Yep.
Develop structural support. So your habits, your biases, the fact that our limitations of being human, those do not get in the way. And then the other tip is have an emergency buffer, because as we know, shit happens. And when it does, we want to have a cushion there and a buffer.
Yeah. So let's talk about that, exactly what you just finished on, life happening. Okay. So we all know that lots of things, and we don't want to think about this, but lots of things can go wrong in life. What effects does an emergency fund have on a person's mental health, confidence, and stress? And why is it so important?
Yeah, a lot of people have a credit card as an emergency fund by default, which by default ensures that you go into a stressful situation as soon as that card gets maxed out, because the shock comes your way. So when you have an emergency fund, although you don't want to initially go through the pain of setting it all up and going through all of your bank statements to save, to build it up, once it's done, you have that ability to know that as you go through life and you're going through your week-to-week movements, in the back of your mind, you just know that should something happen, like a car breakdown, you have to get it serviced, an extra couple $1,000 of expenses come your way. Yep, exactly. You can weather that storm, and it's not in your conscious mind. There's less friction. So you're able to think more, you have more freedom and space to think with clarity to actually then be present at work.
And also have more confidence when you're negotiating for a higher salary. If you decide that you wanted to change jobs, for example, and you're not enjoying your current role, having that emergency fund can give you some space and freedom to be able to say to yourself, I can leave if I want to, if I have to, without putting my family or myself under too much stress.
Yeah, and
which is a huge one, isn't it? Is a huge one to be able to have some control over your career and over who you work for or what you do.
Absolutely, and to weave a bit of the wealth side of the equation in with the happiness and the relationship side, probably need to talk about joint finances and couples. I get this all the time in workshops. Should we have joint finances? Should we not?
Yeah.
Firstly, a lot of cultures have a need to have separate finances. So in a lot of Asian cultures, and you could probably comment on this, Antony, from authority, having lived in China. I actually went there for a brief period of time. There's this focus of hiding wealth from each partner, to not show that you have too much money. Yet you want to appear as showing that you have high status. In a lot of Italian cultures, there are concepts of men and women having separate money. However, when it comes to implementing a system that provides structural support, separate finances and having, say, a Western culture, I find it doesn't work. And the reason is that imagine what I just said and setting that up. That's hard enough. And then going, oh, yeah, you have your own like future savings and your own like share of the bills, and I reimburse you with direct debits for those bills. And then we have our own separate here. And my head's already hurting, right? And I do this for a living. So one way to practically have separate finances, if it's a cultural thing that you have as a couple and you want to join finances, I think one of the first things to do is actually admit that above that spending bucket, it just has to be joint, as in mortgage, savings, bills, those things. If you have shared goals together as a couple, we find that it can harm the relationship if you have separate goal buckets, as an example. So if one partner's going in one direction, the one's in the other, one's saving for the golf house, holiday home, and the other is saving for a beach home.
Yeah, and a big one as well, they might have different risk appetites. That's a big one too. So one wants to take a lot of risk with the money and the other wants to pay back the mortgage. It's a really common one. And the sense of security. I think in my experience, what a lot of men don't realize when they get married is just how important it is for a female to feel secure, because women by default have to give birth and, biologically care for a child, whereas men, biologically could pack up and leave, which happens too much. But having separate, the family courts aren't particularly easy in that regard anymore. But still, the purpose is really to build trust and to build communication. And I think a lot of men underestimate just how important it is for a woman to have those goals discussed and to go through that process. And a lot of women default to saying, oh, I'll let the husband take care of it, or, I'm not good at this, I'm not good with money, so I'll let my husband take care of it, or he's the main earner, maybe. So, those sorts of relationships, in my view, cause some resentment often, and that can build over time. And what you spoke about earlier in the podcast in particular, the number one cause of divorce, that is 100% in line with my anecdotal experience. If couples aren't on the same page financially and aren't trusting each other financially, that's going to have effects in other areas too. And I wouldn't if I was a betting person, I would be saying that marriage is either going to be an unhappy one or it's not going to last. It's
absolutely. We've done, as you know, I'm building a fintech app that helps put that into action, that bucketed system.
Yep.
Involving less effort for people and more time saving. That's
exactly what I want to ask your next question. What are you doing at the moment? So you're answering my next question. Tell me about what you're working on.
Yeah, so fintech app. It's called Cruise Money. And we're currently selling a lot of our technology to other businesses at the moment. However, in the background, we are building Australia's first open banking related personal savings tool. In layman's terms, it's an automated money manager. It'll access your bank data in a way where you know what you're sharing, but it'll access that information via a government mandated framework called open banking. And then when it accesses your bank accounts, it will bucket your money for you, as we said, income, bills, savings, spending, and then it'll actually trigger transactions between those accounts on your behalf without actually taking custody of your money it's called Cruise Money. Put your money on cruise control. So it's like your automated money manager. So you're busy, you're working, shouldn't need to spend 10 hours doing a budget. Might take an hour just to train the app a bit. So yeah, that's what we're working on, and that's coming probably end of financial year, around that timeline at the moment. And yeah, it's going to be exciting, mate. So that's what I'm working on, and obviously building a really good family office offering and advisory offering with you. So that's also what's got going on.
Thanks, Cody. And where can people keep up to date with you? Where can listeners find you if they're interested?
Generally, I don't like social media platforms as such.
Mm-hmm.
However, LinkedIn is probably the one I'm most likely on, and potentially doing the odd troll. But yeah, LinkedIn is where I'm most active, and other than that, I'm not on Instagram. I don't like what it does to people and kids, so I'm more just LinkedIn and trying to stick to the professional content on that platform. Fantastic.
Cody, thanks so much for your time today. It was really insightful having you on, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how we can help Australians do some of these things we talked about today, build up that savings buffer, and have a lot better security, financial security, more peace of mind, and most importantly, not find themselves on the wrong side of an accident should one ever happen. I think that's the main takeaway from today is, have a rainy day fund, and whatever you have to do to get one, make it happen.
Anthony, we all die someday. That's going to happen. We don't know when. So we've only got one life. You've got to live it now. So get moving.
Yep.
Don't sit back and put the head in the sand. I know it's easy. It's tempting. But let's get it started and
cut up the credit card.
Yeah, just get it going. And yeah, you might think some people are too far behind now. Why bother? You're not. There's people who've crawled out of holes bigger than what you're in. So let's just that's probably my closing message: is action, not planning, is a big overlooked thing, because action requires fighting fear. Planning's easy. Read a book. I know everything about this topic. I read that book. I can reference it. I can quote that person. I can recall it. No. Did you take actions speak louder than words? What did you do today that made you one step closer to your future self that you would be proud of? That's what you need to do.
Love it. Thanks so much, Cody. Speak soon.
See you, Antony.
Bye.
If you like this podcast, please subscribe, like, and share with your friends and family.